All right, everybody good? Tuesday night, we have to get started a day early this week because the 49ers are playing on Saturday. It's the playoffs against the Seahawks, and we're going to talk some Brock Purdy today because, this is something really interesting. Brock Purdy, obviously, parading through the league right now, highest passer rating of any NFL quarterback, not just a rookie, of any NFL quarterback since he took over for the 49ers this year. So, I mean, he's doing a number on the NFL. But the question is, can he keep it up into the playoffs? And it's interesting that this first round of the playoffs features a unique test for Brock Purdy. Seattle will be the first defense that gets to see Brock Purdy a second time. And we know that the NFL is all about adjustments and counter adjustments, right? That's how Tom Brady has created the most spectacularly long career of all time. He's now at age 45 because anytime a defense is adjusted to him, he's counter adjusted. And that chess match has gone back and forth for years. So Tom Brady is able to stay a step ahead of the game. I think he threw for 4,000 plus again this year, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. Brock Purdy, obviously, on the opposite end of his career. He's at the very start of it. But if he's going to sustain the success that he's seen, he's going to have to make adjustments or counter adjustments to whatever the opposition throws at him. And the teams that have faced Brock Purdy so far have had tape on him, except for the Dolphins, really, right? And teams have been able to take that tape, apply their adjustments. But so far, Brock Purdy has been a step ahead as far as his counter adjustments go. But this game is going to be a unique test, and it's going to be the first time that an opponent will be able to see its own schemes, its own players operating against Brock Purdy, and players on the field, not just the coaches, the players on the field will also have that experience operating against this quarterback, and they'll have a second shot at him. So what is that going to mean? How's that going to impact this game? How is Brock Purdy going to respond? Those are all questions that we won't know the answer to until Saturday, but we can sit here and surmise about the nuances of how everything is going to work. First off, I want to say this. Brock Purdy is actually healthy this time. So this first point comes with an asterisk. The Seattle Seahawks may not have seen the actual Brock Purdy back in the middle of December in Week 15. This was the spray chart of throws from Brock Purdy back then. You will notice that nothing traveled over 20 yards, and the explanation as to why is simple. He was badly hurt. Purdy wasn't able to throw a pass in practice leading up to this game. He had to take an injection to be able to throw a pass to overcome the pain of his oblique and rib injury. The warm-up for Brock Purdy featured, it looked like comfortable throws short, but he didn't even try anything deep. And here during the game, you can see that he didn't try anything over 20 yards. So we saw a limited version of Brock Purdy against Seattle, but he still beat him. He was still really good. You see the final line down here, 17 of 26, 217 yards, a pair of touchdowns, and he took care of the football. No interceptions. There was a near interception. Quandre Diggs almost got him in the second half, but Diggs dropped it, so Purdy got away with one. But for the most part, this was the night that the 49ers won the NFC West, and Brock Purdy got glowing reviews leaving the game because he had accomplished something that was on his checklist, and that was performing well on the road. Remember, it was home game against Miami when he came in for Jimmy Garoppolo, home game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and everybody said, well, how's he going to do in a road game? Well, he did just fine, even with an injury in a road game on a short week against the Seattle Seahawks. Perhaps the most impressive play was how he dove for that first down on the run near the sideline. But when we talk about adjustments and counter adjustments, I think the first thing that the Seattle Seahawks are going to try to adapt against is Brock Purdy's speed. And I already saw a little bit of this in the 49ers' most recent game against the Arizona Cardinals. He took that bad 17-yard sack. Kyle Shanahan today said that he was yelling in Purdy's headset. He was upset. He said, you can't take that sack. It didn't seem that Purdy was getting to the edge quite as easily as he had been in other games when he bolts out of the pocket, because we know he's got an elite 10-yard burst. But I think the defenses had generally underestimated him throughout the first few games. Now they realize how quick he is. And we saw the Arizona Cardinals with J.J. Watt deliver more disciplined pass rushes. I think that the Seattle Seahawks are going to try to replicate that. And it's one thing to say that you're going to deliver a more disciplined pass rush. It's another thing to actually be able to do it, which is why I think that it's significant that Seattle's players on defense have already faced Brock Purdy because now they know what that first step looks like. They know what the first 5 to 10 yards of his burst look like. That can make all the difference between the angles that you take. So Purdy's going to have to be ready to counter adjust, right? This is going to be the Seattle adjustment. He's going to have to be ready to counter adjust. That means he's going to have to keep his eyes downfield when he starts bailing the pocket. When he does start moving, maybe he needs to snap back, be ready for throws over the middle of the field, because we look at how Purdy has done across the entire field this year. This is from PFF. This is Purdy's spray chart. Look how good he's been to the intermediate middle of the field, between 10 and 20 yards. He's 20 of 23 for 381 yards. There's a pick in there, but there are only 3 incompletions. And one of the incompletions was the ball that was nearly intercepted by Quandre Diggs against Seattle. But when you're talking about Purdy bailing the pocket, pass rushes, being disciplined, keeping him there, he's got to pick on the part of the field where he's most comfortable. And if you see between 10 and 20 yards downfield through the air, in the middle of the field and to the left, he's been really good. To the left, even better. 7 of 8, 89 yards, a couple touchdowns, including the one to Kittle that we saw this past weekend, and an essentially perfect quarterback rating. He hasn't been quite as good throwing to the right, as you can see. This is an adjustment that might be coming from Seattle. They might try to pressure him to throwing to the right. We know Pete Carroll loves to run a lot of zone defense. He can overload the left side, where you see Purdy's got a lot of good stuff. 100 rating, short left. 152.6 medium left, 156.3 deep left, middle of the field between 10 and 20 yards, 115.1, middle of the field short, 94.9. But then look at the numbers on the right: 83.6, 41.7, and then deep, he's only tried once. But maybe that is the story there. He's only tried to go deep outside right once. So when you look at adjustments, Seattle's going to try to take advantage of the fact that more disciplined pass rushing lanes could try to cut off some of that instant burst speed that Brock Purdy has. But they're also, I think, going to look at different portions of the field and see, can he beat us to the right? Remember all the big plays against the Seattle Seahawks? It's Brock Purdy, right-handed quarterback, looking to the left side of the field. Looking to the right for a right-hander is a little bit different because it's usually further along in your progression. You're going to be looking to the natural throwing side, so you're going to be working left to right. Now, if Seattle can force Brock Purdy to hold the ball another hitch, another couple ticks, maybe that's when you force him to start throwing to the right. So it's going to be fascinating to me because so far Purdy has been so good. The release has been quick. The decision-making has been good. He's gotten a couple breaks, right, on the interception train. We remember Quandre Diggs dropping the one against Seattle, but he's went and ran with the breaks. Like right after he gets the break, he doesn't let, the fact that there was a near miss there shake his confidence. He goes back and starts firing the football. And generally it's turned into points. In fact, the 49ers have scored 35 or more points in every single one of Brock Purdy's starts so far, except for the one at Seattle. That was 21 points, but it would have been 28 there at the end. Jordan Mason didn't quite make it to the end zone, and the 49ers kneeled it out. But it still was lower than 30. But the caveat here is that he was hurt in that start. So I think it's clear which start Brock Purdy was hurt for. It was the one against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 15. We knew that, and then you look at the point output, 49ers weren't quite as explosive offensively. You saw the Purdy throw chart. Now, the 49ers made up for it with yards after the catch. And maybe they're going to have to do that again if it's really wet on Saturday at Levi Stadium. It might be hard to throw it further downfield. But Seattle's defense is terrible against yards after the catch. The Seahawks are the second worst defense in football when it comes to yards after the catch allowed per reception, behind only the Arizona Cardinals. And you remember George Kittle rampaging through the defense in Seattle. You remember, Christian McCaffrey had a massive amount of touches that game. The Seahawks were just following him wherever he went by the second half, parted the Red Sea for everybody else. But McCaffrey is also a guy that does a lot of damage after yak. The 49ers did not have Deebo Samuel against the Seattle Seahawks in Week 15. That was the week after he got hurt against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a huge deal because Deebo Samuel saves a lot of his best football for Seattle, a team that has struggled to tackle in the open field and therefore has struggled against yards after the catch. The ultimate yak play was George Kittle on a long touchdown in the second half to the Seahawks. Nobody wanted a part of him. John Embry, former 49ers tight ends coach, used to fine George Kittle $10 every single time he ran out of bounds because he said the sideline should not tackle you. You should force an opposing player to tackle you because you're 250 pounds and you run a 4.4. People are afraid to tackle you. So George Kittle took that to heart because he paid a few fines his rookie season in 2017. And by the way, what do they do with the fine money? They go to Vegas with the fine money. The tight end room, they love to fine each other. So Embry fine guys for running out of bounds. Tight ends fine each other for other stuff. George Kittle fined Brock Purdy for his Christmas card, not because he was against the Christmas card, but because Brock Purdy made sure to hand out the Christmas card while the media was in the room. So it was a look at me move, according to George Kittle. So George Kittle got so Purdy got fined, even though he's technically not in the tight end room. So I mean, you got guys finding each other everywhere. But one of the original fines was former 49ers coach, tight ends coach John Embry fining Kittle and his tight ends every single time they ran out of bounds instead of taking on a tackler back in 2017. That embedded itself in Kittle's head. And now, I mean, he's one of the biggest yak monsters in football. And, you know, I was thinking about John Embry when George Kittle was on that touchdown run against Seattle. It was the pass and run down that left sideline to open up the second half. And I said, you know, this has really paid off for Kittle and the 49ers. And as he's running on the sideline, I knew he was going to cut in. He's not going to run out of bounds. And Seattle, so bad against the Yak, I think they might have thought he was going to run out of bounds. But that's what makes the 49ers different physically. They don't just give up on plays. They're making sure that they're full roar, aggressive on offense. And that's why they consistently are at the top of the league charts in Yak. And Seattle just happens to be at the bottom of them defensively. So this is going to be a big area for the 49ers to exploit. So that's Brock, you know, the Brock Purdy offense matchup. Purdy's going to have more weapons at his disposal with Deebo Samuel back. I mean, it is an embarrassment of riches for the 49ers offense. I don't think they're going to have to go heavy touch for Christian McCaffrey. Let me open up the box score from the first Seattle game so we can see exactly what the ball distribution looked like. But I could tell you that it was strongly tilted toward McCaffrey. It was eyebrow raising, especially in the first half. Okay, I can get this open for you guys. Let's take a look here. 49ers 21, Seahawks 13. Would have been 28-13 had they not taken these there at the end. So don't let that one possession difference fool you. McCaffrey had, 26 carries. Is right up here. 26 carries, 108 yards. And then receiving wise, he had 8 targets and 6 receptions. So 32 touches for McCaffrey, would have been 34 had the 49ers had their way. So this was a heavy usage game. He was the fulcrum. I still remember the double play fake that they ran with Kittle wide open over the middle in the first half, one of Kittle's 11 touchdown catches this year. Also on that play, he used the fact that he could bowl people over to kind of intimidate Seattle. They took some creative angles. Nobody really wanted to mess with George Kittle over the middle of the field. But, the way the 49ers set that up was fake to Ray McCloud, fake to Christian McCaffrey, and then McCaffrey especially was like this gravitational pull, right? He was like a big planet sucking in a bunch of asteroids or something. And Seattle was just following Christian McCaffrey on the fake out to the flat. George Kittle was wide open down the middle of the field. So that kind of stuff, the 49ers were far ahead of Pete Carroll schematically in that game, and they're going to try to remain that far ahead of him schematically in this game, even though this is the second chance for Seattle to see Brock Purdy. Everybody welcome in. We're talking Purdy. Now we're going to talk, the fact that he's healthy this time against Seattle. If you're just joining the live right now, I'm going to talk about a little bit of defense now because the 49ers really did shut down Seattle in that last game. I mean, there was a garbage time touchdown from the Seahawks. I believe that ended the 49ers shutout streak in the second half. Oh, yeah, that did end the shutout streak in the second half, right? Because the week before the 49ers played Seattle, they were at home against – who are they at home against? Man, week 14. Who did the 49ers host? Oh, yeah, they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they had that might have killed the second half shutout streak then because Tampa Bay did score in the second half. So the 49ers, ever since they beat the Rams. It went Rams. Then they went into the bye week, right? I got to pull up the schedule here. My memory is getting fuzzy in this 2022, now 2023 season. I want to get this right, though. I want to make sure that we're on top of our memories looking back on this season because I was going through some statistics today, and so many of them are better viewed through splits, right? After McCaffrey, before McCaffrey, you understand what kind of impact he had. The bye week, I think, had a big impact in a positive way on the 49ers. All right. So, okay, they played New Orleans in week 12 when they got back home from Mexico City. They played Miami in week 13, and I was right. They played Tampa Bay in week 14, followed by Seattle. That was that week 15 game. Then Washington, then Vegas, then Arizona. Now it's back to Seattle again. Not literally to Seattle, but back to playing the Seahawks again in the first round of the playoffs. But anyway, 49ers second half shutout streak. I'm looking here. It started against the I believe it started against the Los Angeles Rams, right? It was a 4-game thing. Or was it a 5? Yeah, I don't think, yeah, it was a 4-game thing that started with the Rams, went to the Chargers, continued with Arizona, and obviously continued then along to the 4th game against New Orleans. And then Miami snapped the second half shutout streak, but the 49ers defense also had a 20-point streak to where they were holding opponents under 20. They did that for the Rams game, the Chargers game, the first Cardinals game, the Saints game, the Miami game, the Tampa Bay game. So that's 6 straight games, 7 against Seattle. And then finally, where they were trying to get to 8, they were tripped up when Washington scored 20 points in week 16. Anyway, 49ers defense, they really did a number on Seattle back in week 15 with their cornerback play. First off, Charvarius Ward trailed DK Metcalf, like followed him around, not zone defense, man-to-man defense, about 70% of the time. And DK Metcalf didn't do all much of anything against Charvarius Ward. 4 catches for 33 yards. Wasn't a big performance. Total, he had like 5 or 6 catches for 50 yards. Not a big performance at all. We also have to talk about Jimmy Ward on Tyler Lockett. Lockett hits Jimmy Ward, 49ers slot cornerback, 2 targets, 1 reception, 9 yards. It was superb defense from Jimmy Ward against Tyler Lockett. Lockett did a total of 7 catches and 68 yards of damage, but no big damage against any 49ers cornerback. The most he had was 3 catches on 5 targets for 13 yards per reception against Diamador Lenore. And I have to say that Diamador Lenore didn't allow anything big against Seattle. Seattle didn't get anything big through the air. The Seahawks, talking about the second half 49ers defense and how prolific they had been in that stretch, they finally gave up a touchdown to Seattle in garbage time. But before that, Seattle had mustered only, 6 points? Yeah, they lost 21-13. So the 49ers put a lid on that Seattle offense, which against other teams, many of them, has been a high-flying unit with Geno Smith. He's been able to throw downfield to Metcalf, to Lockett, to some of his other weapons. But it wasn't the case against the 49ers. They really smothered Seattle in that game. And I think it really started with Diamador Lenore frustrating. I mean, Diamador Lenore was good in that game as well. He had the pick 6 that got wiped off the board. But it started with Charvarius Ward frustrating DK Metcalf, really taking his big-time impact potentially out of the game plan. And then the 49ers, with that coverage support, the rush overwhelmed the Seattle offensive line. You've got Charles Cross at left tackle, Abraham Lucas at right tackle. Between the two of them, they gave up 6 pressures. Nick Bosa was all over the backfield in that game. I'll say it again because this is something that I've repeated now many times, but it's really worth noting. By the letter of the law, the Bosa personal foul penalty against Geno Smith that nullified Diamador Lenore's pick 6 might have been the right call, but we do know that if Bosa had landed on him just a little bit differently, which maybe with that learning experience he'll do next time, we do know that that pick 6 would have busted the game wide open, similar to week 2 when the 49ers won 27-7. And it would have been even worse if it were not for a blocked field goal returned by a touchdown for the Seahawks. So the 49ers have proven to be a lot better than Seattle over the past 2 games, and they're going to try to perpetuate that on Saturday. That being said, beware of Seattle's special teams. I just said big kickoff or a field goal block return that, it never made week 2 hairy But if that happens earlier in this game, oh boy, this is going to get hairy, right? Nick Bosa said it best today. You've got to come out fast so that Seattle doesn't get any hope. The 49ers are clear favorites in this game. They've beaten the Seahawks badly twice. There's many reasons to believe they're going to beat them badly 3 times in a row. But if the 49ers slip up in some way, and it might happen on special teams because that's where Seattle might have some of its edge, that's where the Seahawks can potentially get some hope. And you don't want to give a big underdog hope. 49ers are close to 10-point favorites, 9.5 to 10 across the books. And you know what's ironic about this special teams thing is that the Seahawks have been a good special teams unit for over a decade now. This goes back to the early Legion of Boom days. Their coordinator on special teams is Brian Schneider. He's the 49ers' first-year special teams coordinator, and the 49ers unit, which ranked number 26 in DVOA last year, they now rank number 7 in special teams this year. So Schneider built a Seattle special teams juggernaut, and he's done a really good job in his first year with the 49ers. They've surged even throughout the course of this regular season. So when you look at Brian Schneider and you look at the unit that he's fielding, you have to realize that on the other side of the ball, the Seahawks still have a good special teams crew. Schneider might not be there anymore. He might be with the 49ers, but Pete Carroll has kept that a point of emphasis. And to me, we look at the field goal block for a touchdown in week 2. We look at all that Seattle did to the 49ers last decade with special teams. And we look at the fact that the 49ers are so much better on offense and defense than the Seahawks. You better be ready for Seattle to have something up their sleeve on special teams, because that could be the great equalizer in this football game. And, you know, the unequalizer could be how bad Seattle has been against yards after the catch. All right, 49ers Seahawks on Saturday. Let me get a good little text title in as we talk about this. There it is. Perfect. Day's news, by the way, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles back at practice with his neck sprain. He's day-to-day. Aaron Banks and Dre Greenlaw also back out there. It couldn't have been better injury news, really, for the 49ers. Essentially, everybody who was questionable entering this week was back out at practice today. The only 2 players on the 53-man roster that weren't at practice today were Jimmy Garoppolo and Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas has got a little bit of an ankle issue or some kind of lower body issue, so he was not at practice. And if he's not out there tomorrow, unlikely that he'll be available for special teams against the Seattle Seahawks. That being said, we just passed the 1-year anniversary of the 49ers beating the Rams in week 18 at SoFi, and the clincher was obviously an Ambry Thomas interception in that game. All right, let's get to your questions now. Boom, there we go. 49ers Q&A. See what this is all about. No, I don't think the Seahawks are better in rainy weather. The 49ers have had some rain experience this year. Seattle, it tends to stay weirdly dry during their home games. There's like a joke in Seattle. Yeah, like it for some reason doesn't rain all that much, even though it rains all the time here during these home games. Both teams are just as experienced in the rain. These are professionals. These are guys that have bounced around the whole league. It hasn't been pouring every single game in Seattle. What rain does is it creates a neutralizing factor. So favorites never like rain. If you're a heavy favorite like the 49ers, you'd rather fight a team in perfect conditions because no funny business can happen then. I think with a little bit of rain or a lot of rain, it opens the stuff up for some errors. It keeps the door open for the game to be closer, and it can potentially give the Seahawks some hope. And that's why Nick Bosa said today, we just can't give them hope. We got to come out fast and snuff out hope. That's what the 49ers are thinking. David, why did the Cardinals call timeouts at the end of the first half and the Niners had the ball? It seemed weird to me. Well, Cliff Kingsbury got fired the next day, so maybe ownership in Arizona didn't know why he called timeouts either. Is Brock Purdy able to grow facial hair? Not as well as me, but I'm a little bit older than him. You guys saw the beard that made a big appearance this offseason. I look at Brock Purdy. I don't think I would have been able to grow that kind of beard at his age. what I'm talking about on me, not on Brock Purdy. He's in his young 20s. So, I mean, some people, they could be older too, and they can't grow a beard. It's just not in their genetics. So we won't know until we know with Brock Purdy, unless he's got some kind of mustache photo from college at Iowa State. With Mitchell's return, do you think the Niners split his carries with McCaffrey down the middle? I don't know about it down the middle. I think a lot of it will be dictated by game flow. You could shoot for something in that ballpark. But McCaffrey had 26 against Seattle in week 15. Elijah Mitchell wasn't available. And yes, I do expect the 49ers to utilize Mitchell to take a load off of McCaffrey, and then Jordan Mason's Mariano Rivera. He's your closer. That was not the first save for Jordan Mason. I mean, he got a big one against New Orleans. That was a couple weeks before that. He's running his tail off, but that was the first road save. He came in and nailed down the final 3 outs for the 49ers to take the division. There was still stuff at stake there. At that point, if the 49ers don't move the ball, don't pick up the first down that Mason got on his big run, they're only up 8, right? Seattle had scored. Seattle was coming off of a feel-good touchdown drive, and you can't play with fire in the NFL. Even an overmatched opponent has so many good players, because these are all professionals. These were all the best guys in their college teams that they can put the hurt to you. The Indianapolis Colts found out the wrong way this year against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, why don't we talk a little bit of playoff picture right now as far as when the 49ers might play the following week if they win this game. So the 6th seed, the New York Giants, travel to Minnesota. And then you got the 5 seed Dallas Cowboys traveling to Tampa Bay to play Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. The way that this is shaping up is if Minnesota beats the Giants, they're 3-point favorites, the 49ers will play Minnesota, right? Because they have to play the highest remaining seed as the 2 seed, whereas the 1 seed gets to play the lower remaining seed. So the 49ers would be penciled in to a game against the Minnesota Vikings. They did joint practices with them back in October. Now, with the Vikings, they play on Sunday this weekend, right after the 49ers play. The Buccaneers and the Cowboys play on Monday. The NFL almost certainly will not make anybody do a Monday to Saturday of the next week turnaround. That would be crazy. The NFL will be rightfully condemned if they tried something like that. It might even be against their bylaws in the CBA. I don't know. But assuming the Vikings win, they will be the 49ers' opponent in the NFC divisional playoffs. And that means that the 49ers won't have anything to do, their opponent won't have anything to do with this Monday night game. And because of that, I think the 49ers would very obviously get the early window Saturday of the divisional round. Because you've got to give Tampa Bay or Dallas, depending on who wins that game, a little bit more rest than going from the weekend to Monday to an early start in the weekend. So in all likelihood, this is if Minnesota wins and the 49ers win, 49ers play the following Saturday at Levi's against Minnesota. If Minnesota loses, though, that's where things get different, right? Minnesota loses, then the lowest seed, which would be the New York Giants, would go and play the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They would get the lowest seed. And then the 49ers would take the winner of Tampa Bay and Dallas. And because the 49ers would take the winner of Tampa Bay and Dallas, who play Monday night, the 49ers would host on Sunday. So it's going to come down to that. All right, time to answer some more questions. Good questions. Put them in, and I'll get to them here. 49ers are a little susceptible to mobile QBs, just like any team is. Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Giants, Eagles' biggest threats. Geno, not very mobile, doesn't run very fast. Tom Brady, definitely not. Kirk Cousins, no. Dak Prescott, not as well as he used to. The 49ers are super aggressive with the wide 9 rushing alignment. They have really fast linebackers to try to make up for that, but sometimes there's going to be a rushing lane that even those linebackers are not able to clog up. So it's tough. How's Javon Kinlaw been performing since he returned? He's gotten what? I think 16 snaps, then 22, then 22. The main thing is to knock off Russ, get the snaps. In my opinion, he's been really good on the goal line. The goal line stand against Washington and then the goal line stand against the Raiders. Javon Kinlaw was a big part of both of those. Just a big body pushing an offensive lineman back on both of those. He's got one pressure since he got back, one pass rushing pressure. And the 49ers are still playing the run well. He's a guy that's never going to, unless he starts getting a lot of sacks and big time flashy stops, it's probably not going to grade crazy well. I don't even know what his like PFF grades and stuff are, but his job is to be a line mover, right? He has to be big enough to be a body mover up front, and he may not get the individual accolades through tackles or whatever against the run, but if he's creating opportunities for other teammates by being that body mover, and I could tell you that I think that he was really, really good at the goal line for the 49ers during their two recent stands, which have been a hallmark of this defense. Will Deebo Samuel's return be the biggest factor in this game? Maybe. Can't tell you for sure. I mean, Seattle's terrible against Yak. Deebo Samuel typically owns Seattle. It's just another weapon on top of an embarrassment of riches. Christian McCaffrey is obviously also in the backfield, and Elijah Mitchell's back. That's a big return too. It's about how Kyle Shanahan manages this entire really impressive arsenal. Should Pete Carroll be considered a great coach? Yeah. I mean, either really good or great. I mean, he's been around for a long time. Did good stuff at USC, obviously. Built that into one of the powers that everybody still talks about to these days. But he won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. You got to give him credit. I know that pains 49ers fans. That 2013 season, that Seattle defense. By the way, Pete Carroll, Bay Area native, grew up a 49ers fan. Still seems like a 49ers fan when he's glowing about them on the radio, waxing poetic about the 49ers. But Pete Carroll went to Redwood High School, not in Visalia, California, Redwood High School in Larkspur, Marin County. He was classmates with Robin Williams, who's also from Marin County. Pete Carroll then went to the College of Marin, which is right next to Larkspur. It's in Kentfield. I teach at College of Marin, by the way. Teach a class there every semester. And then Pete Carroll obviously went on to his coaching career after that. He worked with Monty Kiffin really early in his career, where he took some of the Monty Kiffin coverage principles and started creating his own defensive ideas. Pete Carroll later returned to the Bay Area in the 1990s when he was the 49ers defensive coordinator for two seasons, 1995 and 1996, 2 seasons right after they won their most recent Super Bowl. 49ers had the best defense in the league Carroll's first season, despite losing Deion Sanders, who was only around for that Super Bowl campaign. By that time, when you saw Pete Carroll working with a defensive-minded coach and George Seifert, you saw the Seattle-style defense, the hybrid of what Carroll learned under Monty Kiffin way back when with Tampa Bay, and then what he learned under George Seifert, who ran with the elephant, the Leo edge rusher, right? You saw you saw Carroll take those two things, put them together. A couple NFL jobs later, the Jets and the Patriots, and then the USC job later, this defense that is a hybrid of so many different concepts in NFL history, because Pete Carroll's been around, that defense resurfaced with the Seattle Seahawks in the early 2010s. And then it extended to the 49ers because one of Pete Carroll's assistants was Robert Saleh. Saleh hired by Shanahan in 2017. The 49ers obviously imprinted the Seattle-style defense, 4-3, cover 3, edge rusher, Leo, you name it, good zone coverage in the back end. They brought in the prototype for the cornerback position himself in Richard Sherman. Obviously, with DeMeco Ryans now as the defensive coordinator and the 49ers roster having evolved over the past few years, they're no longer a pure Seattle-style cover 3. They mix up a lot more stuff. They blitz a lot more than Pete Carroll does. I think some of that aggressiveness led to the fact that the 49ers led the league this season in interceptions, led the league in turnover margin. I mean, they're getting after it, but the original roots of what the 49ers are doing right now, that passed through Pete Carroll if you go all the way up the tree. And anyway, this is a long answer to a short question, but I think you have to consider Pete Carroll a great coach because A, he does have that Super Bowl ring, not easy to get. B, he's had longevity now with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, this is a team this year, everybody was counting him out, right? No Russell Wilson. Boom, they're right back in the playoffs. You have to give Pete Carroll credit for that. And C, on top of all that, his ideas have flowed, have matriculated to the rest of the NFL where they've had other success. Like the 49ers went to a Super Bowl and had the most powerful defense in the league, or at least the second most powerful in 2019 behind New England with some of these Pete Carroll principles. So, I mean, this is a guy that's been around, was a defensive coordinator for the dynastic 49ers, a good coach for the Seattle Seahawks. I believe he's 70 years old now. So it's a long coaching career, and I would say that you do have to consider him a great coach. All right. In the preseason, you thought that Banks and Kinlaw were hinge points for the line. How do you feel your assessment played out? Aaron Banks, definitely. And Aaron Banks has played really well for the 49ers. They've needed him to be healthy, and he only missed this past game. Listen to this. The 49ers in pass blocking efficiency, which is measured by Pro Football Focus, ranked number 5 in the NFL cumulatively as a line. Their highest ranking before had been number 19. I think, it was number 19 back in 2019, the Super Bowl season. The 49ers had been a below average pass blocking line, O-line, year in, year out under Kyle Shanahan until this year when I said enough is enough. If this team wants to make it the distance, they don't want to get tripped up by dominant pass rushers or painful playoff exits. The pass blocking has got to be better. And I think the 49ers said enough is enough in 2021 when they drafted Aaron Banks. They said, hey, we're going to go bigger at guard, right? We need a guy who's going to be a wall up there. We can't afford to re-sign Laken Tomlinson, and even Laken Tomlinson was giving up some significant pressure. You could trace Jimmy Garoppolo's 2020 injury struggles back to Quinnen Williams beating Laken Tomlinson. So it was a big deal for the 49ers to spruce up the offensive line in terms of pass protection. They obviously got Trent Williams. They obviously have Mike McGlinchey, who was a better run blocker than pass protector until this year. Mike McGlinchey is now doing a good job in pass protection. And the 49ers have also tried to develop and foster good pass protection at right guard, where we've seen Spencer Burford and Daniel Brunskill split time. The center position has seen good pass protection from Jake Brendel this year too, Pro Bowl alternate. So on the aggregate, because of all the contributions from these players, Banks, very notably at left guard, the 49ers have the number 5 pass blocking efficiency of football. And that's obviously very apparently been a hinge point for this team. When you have a third string QB, a rookie in there, 22-year-old going on 23, 22-year-old rookie in there in Brock Purdy, you need good line play. And the 49ers have gotten it this year. So I think that Banks has been that hinge point. Now, you ask about Kinlaw. 49ers have been able to click even without him for most of the season. I would say that a bigger hinge point up front has been Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead is probably the hinge point of this defense. I get it. You don't want to lose Bosa, whatever. But Armstead's versatility up front unlocks stuff for everybody, not only on that defensive line, but across the board. So Armstead has allowed the 49ers now in 2 straight years to overcome an absence of Javon Kinlaw. I know Kinlaw's back now, but there was an extended absence this year. Armstead was hurt too. That's when the 49ers weren't playing as well defensively, but they really kicked it into gear when he returned. I believe that was against Miami. And, Kinlaw, we'll see what he can give the 49ers here over the next few weeks, however long this playoff run lasts. I'm doing it, man. Can we give Armstead some love? Eldon asks. I loved Buckner, but trading him was the right move. Eric Armstead is a force in the middle, and we got Ayuk from the trade, says Eldon. Yes, I think it's clear as day that it was the right move at this point. You know, everybody wanted to give their knee-jerk reactions right after it happened. Everybody wanted to say, oh, DeForest Buckner has more sacks, but it wasn't about just sacks. It was about the fact that Armstead was cheaper to the point where the 49ers could sign guys, right? They needed to be able to bring in some free agents that have been productive. But also they got a first-round pick in return for DeForest Buckner. And ultimately, Brandon Ayuk was picked in that first round. Unfortunately, Javon Kinlaw has not lived up to that first round status, at least yet. We'll see if he could stay a little bit healthier and develop moving forward. But whoever you pick, at 15 or wherever it was after that trade should not color your view of the trade process. The trade process was fine because the 49ers actually picked the defensive lineman in Armstead, who might have a bigger, more far-reaching impact because he's a great run defender as well, right? And he can play outside or inside. They kept that guy at a cheaper price, and then they were able to stack up more talent on top of that with the first-round pick and with the extra money. How you use that extra capital should not, be used as judgment for or against the trade, right? The trade is the trade, and then what you do after is what you do after. You can change those variables after, but I think the trade being the trade, if it was a pick between Armstead and Buckner, it's hard to argue with the results that the 49ers have delivered since then, because they are now undisputably the number one defense in the NFL for this 2022-2023 season. Yes, Kinlaw is going to be playing on Sunday. He's healthy right now. How good is Jordan Mason in the passing game as a pass catcher and blocker? I think that, the 49ers are spoiled by Christian McCaffrey. He's the best pass catcher out of the backfield in the league. I think that Mason has been working on, his route running out of the backfield. I think his specialty is obviously just toting the rock, bowling over people, taking those aggressive runs that force creative angles from defenders. But he's got a big body, which is why the 49ers really like him for potential pass protection. And that's really important from running backs. Buckner being better than Kinlaw does not have anything to do with how good the trade was. I'm just reading these comments. This is false. This is built on like a false deck of cards. This argument, the trade didn't happen because the 49ers were picking Kinlaw against Buckner, right? They're like, oh, yes, they needed a tackle after Buckner left, but it was Buckner leaving plus extra money, several $1 million of extra money to sign other guys. And the 49ers have since made some impactful signings, plus a first-round pick, plus also being able to keep Armstead. You have several benefits. Obviously, one of the downsides was losing Buckner, but you wouldn't have all those other benefits had you kept Buckner. So the trade is way, way, way more complex than that. The fact that you picked somebody who hasn't yet been able to play afterwards, that was, you blame that draft on that. You don't blame the trade, right? They're two separate steps in the process. We have to stop clumping things together. What we have to keep doing is we have to view things separately, because process is viewed step by step. Process is not viewed by congealing everything together and then acting like something that was actually unrelated was part of the move. It wasn't. The Kinlaw draft happened after the Buckner trade. And you make the trade and then you delegate the responsibility of using the draft pick down the road. And you say, okay, hey, how are we going to use this draft pick? Who are we going to bring in? That's where the 49ers haven't gotten the return on investment. David, DK Metcalf has some really good career stats. Why does he not seem that dangerous? I think he seems plenty dangerous to me. Back when the 49ers didn't have a great pass rush in 2020, right, when Bosa was out, DK Metcalf looked unstoppable against the 49ers. Remember that game against Seattle that really derailed the 49ers season? That was the second Garoppolo injury of the season. We didn't see him again. Kittle got hurt. I think we saw him again, but barely there at the end of the season. DK Metcalf, though, was sprinting downfield. He was doing some crazy stuff. I think Jimmy Ward and him got in a little bit of a yelling / shoving match. Metcalf, those long strides, I mean, big body, long strides, dangerous receiver, good ball skills. He's scary to me. The 49ers have made him look not too scary because their pass rush has overwhelmed Seattle's offensive line. By and large, every single 49ers Seattle game that we've seen here over the past 2 years, the 49ers defensive line has been way better than the Seahawks O-line. Now, the Seahawks won both last year, but it wasn't because they were dominating up front and delivering at will to DK Metcalf. It was because of special teams, right? Special teams was kind of the big difference maker in those games. But I think that if given the opportunity, and that usually comes from pass protection up front, DK Metcalf can give the back end a lot of trouble. Yeah, Charvarius Ward did a really good job against them last week. You know, really scary receivers can look a whole lot less intimidating if you've got the right defenders and you have good defensive players on them, and if the pass rush does its job. I think Tyler Lockett's going to play. Somebody's asking about that, but I don't know as much about the Seahawks injury report yet. I'm going to delve further into that tomorrow. What is the biggest concern about the 49ers team entering the playoffs? Second cornerback spot. I mean, you don't want teams to pick on Deommodore Lenoir. You want Brock Purdy to be able to counter adjust as those counter adjustments get more intense entering the postseason. You do want Jimmy Garoppolo back because you need quarterback depth. You never know. You're one QB injury away from having to go to Josh Johnson, and I don't think the 49ers want to have to do that. So you want more QB depth, and Garoppolo not ready to go at this moment. He's working back. So the 49ers don't have many like big glaring weaknesses. You really have to nitpick. You have to put them under the microscope. But if you look at some of those concerns, those are them, right? You go from week 8 onward, the 49ers are the number 1 offense, number 1 defense, number 7 special teams. They've been really damn good. Complementary football across the board. I mean, maybe my favorite stat for the 49ers, and I told this to Bosa today, I was talking about that a little bit earlier. The defense has been number 1 in efficiency, but on top of that, the defense has the best average starting field position of any unit in the league. Opposing teams are starting at their own 25-yard line against the 49ers defense. That is the best starting field position for any defense in the league. And that is a testament to the 49ers offense and their special teams. It's a testament to them playing complementary football. All 3 phases are working together. So when you talk about concerns for the 49ers, it's hard to have huge ones because they're playing as such a team, right? Offense, defense, and special teams are all firing. And when they're firing like that together, even if one unit has some struggles, you can expect the other 2 to pick it up. And that, you know, a lot of teams are one-dimensional, or they have 2 good phases, but a really weak third phase, or they're shaky in a couple and, you know, okay in another, whatever. You have the full gamut across the NFL. And, you know, a team that's good but has a weakness in an entire phase, and one of the phases is mediocre, whatever, if there's a hole that big, if that one phase is off of its game, the one that's good, right? And then you have to rely on your mediocre defense or your mediocre special teams, you know, your not so strong phases, that's when you lose. That's when you get blown out. But if you have 3 strong phases, and the 49ers have been 1 offense, 1 defense, 7 special teams, your offense can have an off day. Your defense can have an off day. And the other 2 phases are going to pick it up. So that's why it's hard to be that concerned about anything regarding the 49ers entering the playoffs. That's why they're 10-point favorites here. The biggest concern are the best teams that they'll face, and the Seahawks are not one of them, right? So you're going to move forward, and then you'll start to see potentially the Eagles. You always have to be concerned about Tom Brady. The Dallas Cowboys are a 2-way team, you know, a poor man's 2-way team, though. They're not as good of a 2-way team as the 49ers. And then the AFC side of the bracket has some juggernauts. The Bengals, the Bills, the Chiefs, right? Everybody knows the Chiefs are the most recent team to beat the 49ers. So my biggest concern would be those types of teams, because the 49ers roster itself is pretty damn strong. And if anything, you know, can throw it off this weekend, it might be monsoon-like conditions. So maybe worry about that. Brian Greasy has proven himself this season. What's the next step for him? More quarterback coaching. I mean, this is his first time coaching. It's not like he's going to be an offensive coordinator just like that overnight. No, I don't even think that Brian Greasy may want to be an offensive coordinator. I don't know if he wants to be sitting there poring over X's and O's. It's a lot of work. I think he enjoys the hands-on process of working with NFL quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks that he sees some of himself in, right? You could go back to Greasy's playing career, drafted by Mike Shanahan. So he's working in the same, in a rudimentary sense, the same scheme. Sat under John Elway for a year, and then he had to take over as the starter. So he's looking at a guy like Brock Purdy right now. But I mean, initially he was supposed to coach Trey Lance, who had to sit for a year behind a guy, dual threat kind of guy, Trey Lance, right? So Brian Greasy has multiple, physical skill sets to be able to hone and work with, and within the Shanahan offense, Brian Greasy gets to instruct a quarterback who has to learn a scheme that's similar to the one he had to learn about 20 plus years ago. So I think that Brian Greasy has really enjoyed the hell out of this job. I see him having fun out there every single day. The 49ers QB portion of practice, especially the warm-up portion, is a whole lot more varied and active than it was in the past under Rich Scangarello. And that's impressive to me because Greasy's a first-time QB coach. He came from the broadcasting booth. It's clear that he was paying attention on his visits to around the league over the past few years to get ready for Monday Night Football. And he has definitely not been afraid to delegate responsibility to his coworkers. You've got Bobby Slowick, the pass game coordinator. You've got Clay Kubiak, who's the assistant quarterbacks coach. I think Brian Greasy's done a good job managing that team that is really the village that is really guiding the 49ers quarterbacks. And we've seen them really benefit. Both Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, for the majority of this season, have delivered really good football. And Brian Greasy definitely delivers some of that credit. This is good. I don't know if Wishnowski's playing at an all-pro level, and even all-pro is tough. All-pro is the top two at every position out of the whole NFL. So saying, Greenlaw, I would say he's playing at a Pro Bowl level. He was snubbed. Wishnowski playing really well. The 49ers locked both of these guys up with longer-term deals, though, early this season. And I think both of those deals looking really, really strong. I think about $8 million a year for Dre Greenlaw. And Wishnowski was right at about what the number 6, number 7 punter needs to be. So he's being paid fairly by the 49ers this year. Yeah, I saw Garoppolo today. He still has the boot, and he still is using the scooter. He's about to hit 6 weeks. And as I was saying, he said this himself, 6 to 8 weeks, that's that window when this stuff can potentially come off. Because he said he can actually put full weight, flat-footed now on the foot. So it's using the foot that's, I think, is still creating some discomfort and soreness, but we're not at the 6-week mark yet. So that makes sense because fractures take about 6 weeks to fully heal. So once you get past the 6-week mark, you hit that stretch where you're hoping to translate stuff into running. You're hoping to, start to incorporate some actual football movements. And then you're hoping that the ramp up can be quick because Garoppolo's been doing work in the pool. He's still been leg pressing. They found a way to be able to do that. He's maintained a lot of his strength, but you have to make sure that the muscles are all caught up. So, I'm looking at an NFC championship at the soonest based on what I've seen and what I know. And that would still really jive with the initial prognosis, right? That 6 to 8 week prognosis. That'd be on the 8-week tail end. But he might not be 100% yet at 8 weeks. But will he be healthy enough to be active to give the 49ers quarterback depth behind Brock Purdy? That's the big question. And then obviously you have a bye before the Super Bowl. So that pushes stuff even further back. Jimmy just for quarterback sneaks. I don't know if you're going to do that with a guy who's not yet 100% coming off that broken foot. Yeah, I mean, this upsets me. It happens a lot. Everybody, anytime 49ers quarterback does well, it's because Shanahan has a good scheme. I mean, We've seen bad quarterbacks in this scheme. You have to play well to be efficient in this scheme. We've seen Nick Mullins. We've seen CJ Beathard. We've seen Brian Hoyer. You have to, I mean, it's not like, oh, you could just plug in a guy and he'll be good. It's that Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. It's that Jimmy Garoppolo's a good quarterback. Even Trey Lance has not yet been efficient in the 49ers scheme. I don't hold it against Trey Lance, though, because he's barely had, 3 games for the 49ers and a lot of injuries. So we have to wait and see on Trey Lance. But other quarterbacks who have had larger samples, not named Garoppolo, not named Purdy, have really struggled, right? So it takes both. It takes a good play caller and it takes a good quarterback to have the type of success that the 49ers have seen this season from week 2 onward with Garoppolo and then Brock Purdy. And I think that the QBs do deserve more credit in this system just because it's not easy to play QB in the National Football League. Now, who else deserves credit is Christian McCaffrey. He shows up and the field spacing for the 49ers has gone to a totally different level. You have people reminiscing on the Brian Hoyer era. I don't know about giving up on Beathard too early. Beathard did not have the release that Purdy does. He also didn't have the burst that Purdy does. Beathard actually had decent long speed. We saw a big touchdown run in the preseason, right, in 2017. But the thing about Purdy is that he's got a quick twitch. He can get out of the pocket really quickly. Beathard did not have a quick twitch, and that's all the difference in the world. If you don't have the quick twitch, you're going to get destroyed by the pass rush. Now, 49ers are pass protecting much better than they did back in 2017. I mentioned it. They're the number 5 pass blocking team in football now. They were in the 20s, maybe even worse than 25 back when Beathard was around. So it's apples and oranges. All these quarterbacks are working under different circumstances. Above anything else, I will emphasize that football is a team sport. If we don't emphasize that football is a team sport, we go down the path of thinking that everything is 100% tied to the quarterback, and that's just not true. That starts to turn into just really lame Twitter conversation material, right? It's way, way, way more nuanced than that. This is it right here. Yeah, I mean, Garoppolo and Purdy have matched the system well. Garoppolo grew into it. Purdy was drafted into it. I think they saw Purdy on tape and they're like, oh boy, he's got a lot of what Jimmy can do well, but he also has the foot quickness, like the burst. So I think the 49ers saw, oh boy, this is a guy that can maybe even take us to the next level. I don't know, I think everybody's surprised at how high the floor has been to begin. They thought that the floor would be a little bit lower. Maybe Purdy did get away with a couple picks, but you got to give him credit because he's taken the confidence that some breaks have given him early on and just rode with it. And now he's entering the playoffs and, he's looking like he's still flying high. So the whole Purdy experiment, the 49ers badly needed it to go well, and it has gone well. Yes and no. Jimmy Garoppolo took over in 2017 when the 49ers were 1-10 and he went 5-0, and Nick Bosa was still at Ohio State. So, I mean, what Garoppolo did with that roster in 2017, obviously the 49ers believed in it. That's why they paid him the money. Then he tore the ACL in 2018. But, I mean, the one thing that Garoppolo is, I think, really unfairly criticized for, people will say, oh yeah, he can't win without Bosa, he can't win without defense. I mean, the reason that he still is a 49er right now, why he initially became a 49er for the long term, is because he was winning without a great defense and a great running game. And the running game wasn't good in 2017 either. He put the team on his back and carried them in that year. So I think that Garoppolo is just a nuanced quarterback. There's a lot of complicated stuff that people don't fully want to put their whole head around because they want to put him into a box. They want to say, oh, game manager, except he's not, except he takes way more risks than the average quarterback over the middle of the field. That's why the interception rate was higher up until this year. He's like a short range gunslinger who had an interception rate that was a bit too high entering this year, whose mobility probably isn't as good as people remembered it in 2017 after the ACL tear. And because of that, never quite reached superstar status, but he was a damn efficient quarterback game in and game out for the 49ers. And the problem is that there's such a black and white view of QBs, right? It's either you've won a championship for me, you're the greatest of all time, or you're garbage. And social media is kind of the haven, especially on Twitter, of just having to tribalistically divide between those two camps. When the truth about Garoppolo was always on the good side, but it was still in that middle area, right? He was a good quarterback for the 49ers. Maybe I should say is because he's still on the team and we might see him later this season. But he's a good quarterback for the 49ers. But we never saw it past 2017. He was great in 2017. He was playing damn well here in 2022, by the way, too. But we never saw that Mahomes level greatness. So because the 49ers lost to Mahomes and the Chiefs, Garoppolo's discounted as a nothing. But that just isn't true, right? The gray area is where most truth resides. And in this case, the gray area is definitely where we should be looking in our evaluation of Garoppolo and also Brock Purdy. I see a lot of comments like this, and I'll put it up because it's funny. Purdy's the next Montana. Maybe he will be. Maybe he won't. But if he's not, then don't go and try to discard him if you're a fan of the 49ers, right? It's crazy because guys get off to a good start, and then people have Hall of Fame expectations. They don't realize that the league is playing a counter adjustment game defensively against these QBs. And then because of that, when a quarterback does slow down a bit further down the counter adjustment path and doesn't meet the expectations that fans set for him based on his first few starts, they immediately say, oh, he's terrible. It's either you're great or you're terrible. But usually the truth is somewhere in between, right? And the unfortunate part is that with all the negativity these days, good turns into terrible. People don't give the benefit of the doubt. A good quarterback with some flaws, they can't just say, okay, yeah, he's good. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. No, they'll look at the flaws, they'll magnify the flaws and say that he's terrible. So that's why I try to do this on the channel. I try to keep it a little bit more even keeled and realistic. All right, looking for more questions, but I've already been going for over an hour. I think it's going to be time for me to get a little bit of a rest. Yeah, the stats for Garoppolo and Purdy are very, very similar. It's crazy. 49ers actually had a better pass DVOA with Garoppolo and McCaffrey, right? After McCaffrey came for 4 games. But Purdy's is still number 1. I mean, they're both number 1, which is crazy in the league. So it's one of the biggest blessings that the 49ers enjoyed this year was the switch from Garoppolo to Purdy due to that injury was a relatively seamless one to make because I think they drafted Purdy saying he's got a lot of Garoppolo's positive attributes in him, namely the quick release. And that quick release pairs really well with what the 49ers run, especially with McCaffrey now in tow as that outlet option. All right, everybody that's on right now, I've got some homework for you. It's easy. Subscribe. Well, you can subscribe to The Athletic, but subscribe to the channel right now. Follow me on Twitter too. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. You're watching. There's over 1,000 of you in here. Do it, and these videos will be more frequent. And then obviously you can go ahead and check out The Athletic. Big piece coming out tomorrow on Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey is featured in it. This is inside stuff from straight from the 49ers locker room, which will be coming out tomorrow. And on that note, I think it's going to be time for me to go. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Got the best subscribers, best followers. So thank you guys. All right, guys. Appreciate you subscribing. Those of you who did it a long time ago, see some of those comments. And yeah, maybe we can hit 30,000. That would be awesome. All right, everybody, take care. It's been fun. We will see you soon.